Hey everybody, it's Judy Pearson Kobsar, and today's class is the Food Matrix, and I'm really excited about this class. So what I need for you is to be 100% present here. My intention for this class today is to permanently change your relationship with sugar and processed food. But what it's going to take is for you to be here 100% listening fully as if your life depended on it, because it does. Because what we eat changes everything. And I know you've heard me say that before, and you'll hear me say it again. Because when we eat food, we digest it and it goes into our bloodstream and it travels into the cells of our body. And our cells are what actually create our organs and our tissues and provide nutrients and sustenance to every single part of our body. And so we need to provide nutrients and sustenance to our cells. Our cells are responsible for the way our body regenerates. And our cells are also responsible for what we think and how we react to things. So, we're gonna think and feel different if we eat Doritos as opposed to eating broccoli. We're gonna think and feel very different if we're drinking alcohol and soda rather than pure water. So let's get a handle on what we eat and drink so that we can get a handle on how we live and how we think. So that's what this class is all about today. It's called the Food Matrix because I have an analogy about the processed food industry and a movie called The Matrix. Have any of you seen the movie The Matrix? It's kind of old. It's from, I guess, the early 90s. Keanu Reeves, maybe the late 90s. Anyway, so the Matrix is a movie about a machine that takes over the world in the future. And this machine powers itself by using human embryos. Now, I know that might sound graphic, but I'm very passionate about giving you good education about the processed food industry. So using this kind of graphic illustration of the similarities between this machine that uses the human body and the processed food industry is my way of really driving home the point that the processed food industry is not interested in one bit of our health and well-being. So back to the Matrix. So this machine that took over the world uses human embryos to power itself. So it plugs the human baby embryo into itself and holds it in a pod for its entire life. And the human grows up into being an adult, but it's plugged in, so the very life force of the humans, all plugged into this great machine, are powering the Matrix machine. And the Matrix machine is just basically taking over the world. And what the machine did was it gave each human a pseudo life. So in the human's brain, it believes that it's living a life inside the Matrix. But the life is very unsatisfying and very mediocre and very dull and very gray. But at least the human has a life, so they don't try to escape in any way. They don't even know that they need to escape because they're living a life. But it is a very sickly life. So I liken this to the processed food industry because the processed food industry is marketing to us so hard and plugging us into its products so much so that we are feeding it with our money, and its bank accounts are growing and it is getting stronger and it has more power for lobbying and it has more power for marketing and studying our psychology. But yet the human race is becoming sicker, ill, and obese because of it. But we're plugged in. And so this class is going to be about learning what the food matrix, which I call the processed food industry, is doing to us and how to unplug from it so that we can live a vital, healthy, lively life separate from it. Okay, so let's get into this. All right, so the first thing that we have to talk about when we talk about the processed food industry is sugar, because sugar is the main power for that machine. All right, sugar is empty calories. Now, a little bit that you need to know about sugar is that it has many pitfalls to our body, to our life. It causes tooth decay and gum decay, and it causes our blood sugar to spike and then drop. It affects our brain in chemical ways that are addictive. And we need to talk about the makeup of sugar so that you understand what's going on here. It is made up of glucose and fructose, okay, these two simple sugar molecules, and it's broken down into simple sugars once it gets into our bloodstream. Now, glucose is found in every living cell on the planet, and if we don't get it from our diet, then our bodies produce it. Fructose, on the other hand, is different. Our bodies do not produce it in any significant amount, and yet really there's no physiological need for it. Okay, so when we're consuming sugar, these are the two molecules that we're getting that are going into our bloodstream and breaking down. So the liver has to metabolize it because the liver doesn't know what to do with it. So when I say metabolize it, it means it has to process it and spit it out because it has no place for it. And what happens many times is when we consume a lot of sugar, our liver becomes fatty. Our liver becomes, bogged down by the metabolizing of sugar, and it gets gunked up and it gets slow and it gets fatigued and fatty. And then it leads to a new syndrome that is only prevalent, of course, in the US, called metabolic syndrome. So what is metabolic syndrome? Well, it's a new cluster of conditions that the medical industry now names as a syndrome so that they can start to attach medications to it that don't actually resolve the syndrome, but just medicate it so that you keep having the syndrome ongoing, and so then you stay on their medications longer ongoing, and you're again feeding the pharmaceutical matrix bank, and your life quality is getting less and less. Okay, that's just a side note. But metabolic syndrome is a cluster of conditions. It's high blood pressure, high blood sugar, unhealthy cholesterol levels, and belly fat. Okay, and these are all caused by consuming too much sugar. There's other things that sugar do to our body that are negative, and that is that it releases dopamine. So dopamine is a chemical that lives in the reward center of our brain, and it causes us to crave it. So when we eat sugar, we release dopamine, and it's such a good feeling that our body craves it and our brain craves it. So we want it more and more because we want more of that dopamine release because it's a feel-good chemical that gets released, and then it becomes addicting. And there's a study to prove this, which I have the link for it, so if you'd like to read up on it, just email us and we'll provide you with the link for it. Sugar also leads to decreased satiety, meaning you have a decrease in the satisfaction of what you're eating. So it's almost like you're getting numb, you're getting dull. So then you want more, okay? It also causes overconsumption, which is the loss of control, meaning that it's addictive with the release of dopamine. And it's also the major contributor to obesity in our country, and that is why we're in the situation that we're in. I'm going to give you a couple real life examples. Starbucks. Many people, maybe you that I'm talking to, love Starbucks, but they love not just the coffee, but they love those coffee drinks that have the syrups in it and the caramel and the cream on top. And I'm going to give you some real life numbers here. Are you ready? Have you ever had a Frappuccino, or have you ever seen anybody who drinks a Frappuccino? Well, it's kind of like an event, okay? Frappuccinos are this glorious, creamy, frothy, sugar-filled dream that people adore, and I'm going to tell you why they adore it and why they keep going back to it and why Starbucks is so successful. In a grande Frappuccino, and that's like the medium-sized Frappuccino, there is 50 grams of sugar. That is 12 packets of sugar, or 8 teaspoons. So if you imagine a cup, and then you just scoop 8 teaspoons of sugar right into that cup, and then fill it with coffee, and then fill it with caramel and cream, that's what you're drinking. In a Venti Frappuccino, which is the large one, 69 grams of sugar, which equates to 17 packets of sugar, or 12 teaspoons of sugar. Okay, my case rests. That is why Frappuccinos are addictive. That is why people keep going back for more. It's the sugar. The coffee, the caffeine too, but you can get that from just a good, nice cup of black coffee, which is fine. Okay, so with what I've said about sugar, do you need any reasons more than that to start to cut back on your consumption of sugar? I want you to take a second to just think about that. Really, what more do you need? Okay, we're we're going to move on and talk a little bit about processed food in general. So I want you to think of a processed food that you may have ate in your past, maybe growing up. For instance, my example of processed food was I loved Ding Dongs and Ho-Hos, and I also loved Fritos corn chips, Hamburger Helper, and any kind of potato chip, honestly, and candy, but any kind of potato chip, and frosting in, those cans that you frost cakes in. Okay, a lot of sugar in that, a lot of salt, a lot of processed stuff. So those were mainstays for me when I was growing up. My parents didn't know what kind of ill health effects that they could have on the human body. And turns out when I was in my late 20s, I started to develop a digestive disorder called IBS because I was still consuming those foods because that's what I grew up with. And I had to completely overhaul my entire way of eating, and that's why I went to nutrition school and started working here at the Health and Wellness Care Center. But I didn't know that growing up, and my parents didn't either. They didn't have the education, but we have it now, and you're getting it, and I'm hoping that you're gonna live it, love it, and pass it on to your family members and your loved ones. So think of a processed food that you ate growing up often. Think about the marketing that food had behind it. We liked Lucky Charms, and the saying for that was silly rabbit. No, that was Trix. Silly rabbit, tricks are for kids. Okay, that's a saying. Or how about the hot dogs, the Oscar Mayer hot dogs? Oh, I wish I were an Oscar Mayer wiener. Everyone would be in love with me. Okay, so like these jingles that they came up with were so good. That is marketing. The processed food industry spends millions of dollars every year studying our psychology and how to market to us and how to market to our children. And that's something that I'd like to point out to you, is that there is no other country in the world that allows pharmaceuticals and processed food to market to our children. Processed food companies market to our children on TV, and I know you've seen it. And we're the only country that allows that. And that is why small children beat you down and come up to you and say, I want that, I want that. Can't we get that cereal? Can't we get those cookies? It's because they are being marketed to. Okay? It's the Matrix coming down and marketing to the human race so that we plug in, buy their product, keep them healthy, and make us sick. You seeing the pattern here? Okay. All right, so processed food, let's talk about why it's called processed food. It's called processed food because it's laden with chemicals and preservatives and sugar. And everything about it is processed, meaning it has gone through some sort of alteration where the food is actually no longer the food in its real state. So if it had cheese in it, it has now been turned into a powder, dried cheese, with dye added to it, for instance Doritos, and it is no longer really food. I call it food stuffs. And there's also a lot of preservatives in processed food so that it sits on the shelf. It's called shelf life for a reason. The processed food industry needs it to stay on the shelf so that we as consumers have a large inventory of all of their items so that at any time we can walk into the store and pull that box of crackers off the shelf and make sure that our kids are getting Cheez-Its in their lunch. Okay? So lots of chemicals, anything that in it has been altered, if there is some kind of real food in it, lots of sugar, lots of preservatives. Again, stuff our body doesn't know what to do with. You eat that stuff and your liver and your gut and your whole digestive system is going, what the heck is this coming down the pike? What am I supposed to do with this? And so everybody in your digestive system has to work overtime to try to process this stuff and then get it out, which is the metabolizing of it, which mostly gets stored as fat and toxins in your body. And then the toxins turn into different manifestations of symptoms like rashes, like stomach issues, cramping, bloating, headaches, brain fog, a myriad of things that your body is screaming at you saying, look, there's stuff in here that I don't know what to do with, so it's got to come out somehow. I have to tell you that something is wrong, and those are all the signs that our body is trying to give us. When we bring the food matrix into our lives and plug into it, what comes out is illness, ill health, symptoms that can sometimes go undiagnosed or a misdiagnosis, but really if you clean up your diet and start eating whole food, most of that stuff is going to go away. Okay, so good thing to note about why it's called processed food. We already covered enriched in the cracking the code on food labels and what that means. So you need to look out for enriched wheat flour. That is also processed. Okay, we're gonna play a little game. You should have a handout called Name That Food. Actually, it's called Name That Foodstuffs. Okay, and it's just a little sheet like this, and it has 2 paragraphs on it. And it's going to show you ingredients of a food. And I'm not telling you what the food is, and I want you to read those ingredients and in your mind try and guess what actually the food is that gets attached to all of those ingredients. And I'd like you to note that the first food has 32 ingredients in it, and the second food has 34 ingredients in it. So take a minute, look at those. You can even pause this while you're checking them out to see if you can figure out what they are. I'll give you a second, so go ahead and pause it, and when we come back, I'm going to tell you what each of the foods are, and you can see if you got it right. No fair Googling, okay? Okay, all right, the first food, drum roll please, 32 ingredients, Cheez-Its. Yes, indeed, Cheez-Its. The second food, 34 ingredients. Coming in first place with the most ingredients is Doritos. And I want you to remember the packaging on Doritos. A lot of times the ads come on TV and it's this really pretty package of Doritos. And of course the bag is perfect. It doesn't have any wrinkles in it like in real life. And the girls are there with their sunglasses on eating Doritos, and you go, wow, I want to be cool like that and eat those Doritos. Look how happy they are. It's psychology. It's the way they're marketing to us. So be careful of this because nothing in here is useful to your body. Okay? Okay. All right, so final words. How do we unplug from the food matrix since we've been plugged in? Okay, here's a couple steps to take. First of all, just because it's advertised doesn't mean that it's what you're supposed to be eating and consuming and giving to your family. Just because the advertising is slick, is very flashy, and is very appealing, it doesn't mean that that's how you will feel or look or act like when you eat that food. Okay? Number 2, just because it's convenient doesn't mean you should eat it. That's something that came about like after the 50s, was the convenience food. And it's gotten more so because our lives are busier than ever with all of this technology at our hands, at our fingertips. You know, we can work from home, we can work from the bathroom, for God's sakes. Okay, so our life is very full and very busy. So convenient food is very appealing to us. I get that. I have 2 kids, a husband, a business, and I volunteer at their school. So believe me, I get that I would love to just open up a box and feed them dinner. But you have to make time for it. You have to make sure that you're giving your family and yourself whole food, real food, and not giving into the convenience of processed food. All right, number 3, make food part of your plan for the day. Just like, you know, you look at the weather, what's going to be like tomorrow, it's going to rain, so I'm going to make sure that I have on the boots that don't get wet, and I have my jacket, and I find the umbrella for my kids. Make it a plan for your day. What am I going to eat tomorrow? What's in the fridge? Do I have to prep anything to get ready for it? Am I going to be at work all day? Am I going to be in meetings? Are they going to be having an office party where probably I should bring my own food? Make it a plan for your day. Make it something that you decide on prior to the day starting, even the night before, so that it's not a hassle and so that it's convenient for you to wake up, pull out the Tupperware that you prepped the night before, and head on out. Okay? All right, so I want you to learn this mantra. All right, I learned this in nutrition school. Eat food, real food, not too much, mostly plants. Now that's a very simple way of saying just make sure that you're not buying processed food. Unplug from the matrix, eat real food. I'm not advocating a plant-based diet. If you want a plant-based diet, that's fine. We have more information on that. I'm all for animal protein and protein from dairy. That's fine as long as you don't have allergies and you're not on the detox and it's in moderation. But eat food, real food, not too much, and mostly plants. Learn that mantra and you'll be well on your way. Lastly, you get to decide what style of eating is right for you. We have a whole bunch of resources on different styles of eating. So So make sure that it's something that fits your lifestyle and your family's lifestyle. Unplug from the matrix so you're not reliant on these convenience foods and you're not being marketed to. Just turn the TV off, step away from the internet, don't look at the packaging in the stores, and shop the perimeter. Okay? All right, so I have homework for you. And your first homework is, I want you to get a Post-it ready. Okay, so you can just write this on a piece of paper, but eventually I want you to put it on a Post-it. You have another attachment to your email that has a form that I want you to fill out, and that is your homework. So I want you to have that now. If you need to pause it, pause me now to print that out prior to me going on. So take a second to pause, and then we'll come right back. Okay, we're back. So you have your handout. So I want you to fill this out, all right? So the number one is, first, find out what your motivation for keeping sugar and processed food out of your diet is. And I want you to write this on a Post-it. So you should have a Post-it, or you can write it on your piece of paper that you printed your questionnaire out on, and then transfer it to a Post-it later. I want you to write on your Post-it, what is your motivation for keeping sugar and processed food out of your diet, okay? And then I want you to post it somewhere where you usually go to get the processed food. So for instance, my motivation for keeping processed food out of my life is twofold. One, it does not do well in my digestive system. I know there's nothing that my body can utilize if I eat that food. Two, I want to teach my children good, healthy, clean, clear eating habits, and processed food is not part of that. I also want to teach them to unplug from the matrix and not succumb to the marketing and the advertising. Okay, so that is my motivation. So write your motivation down on your Post-it. You can pause me again. Okay, coming back. Next, a homework for you is to read the nutrition section of your binder in full. Okay, and then you are going to choose 2 recipes from that section to try in the next 30 days. And I'd also like you to try to prepare the bone broth. Okay, and that's on page 9. It actually may differ now because we've had updated versions of the binder, but it is in the nutrition section, bone broth. Okay, and then I also want you to complete the following sentences. I tend to eat processed food when blank. And that can be something like when I'm in a hurry and I'm starving and don't have time to make anything. I usually reach for, in my life, it would be carbs. I usually reach for carbs, like a cracker or a rice cake or something quick. When this situation arises, I will focus upon knowing that what my body actually needs right now is nutrients, so grabbing vegetables would probably be better for my body and what I need to get to the next phase, or at least have something in my body so that I can have time to prepare food with half a brain on, because I put food in my body. And I will reach for vegetables instead, because I know that vegetables are going to be what my body utilizes the best and will feed my cells the nutrients that it needs to regenerate and give me optimal health. So I want you to fill that out. I gave you examples of what I would fill it out with. That's your homework, to fill that out. Take a nice deep breath after you've filled it out. Read it again. Post your motivation somewhere and unplug from the food matrix. Have a good day.